a cunning scavenger. An insidious survivor roams the asphalt jungles of the world, leaving a trail of disgust, fear, and fascination. It's the disreputable rat.
Rats excite our imagination, raising deep-rooted fears in us, not just in the movies. Since time immemorial, they have been following human civilization and skillfully exploiting it to their own advantage.
Hey, Ed, I found the rats!
These intelligent creatures populating the netherworld of the sewer system disgust and fascinate us at the same time. Despite centuries of prejudice, rats have more in common with us than we care to believe. In the course of evolution, their amazing adaptability is comparable to just one other mammal: humans. One of their secrets of success is their mobility. Rats hitch a ride on anything that comes along, usually as stowaways. Their view of the world differs considerably from ours. Not just in the way they see colors. Rats simply love places that we steer clear of. They live off the crumbs that we throw away, yet they are closer to us than we feel comfortable with. A brown rat cautiously disembarks from a train. The inveterate traveler knows that rails run directly into the center of human civilization, into its own particular habitat. Hungry from the long journey, the rat starts to hunt for something edible in the city jungle. Darkness offers protection. Light spells danger, especially when bright spotlights suddenly cut through the night. The roaming rat was lucky. Many of its species don't get off this lightly. A sigh of relief in the theater as well. The audience recovers from the thrilling movie. But even here, the ubiquitous rat is hard on our heels, unnoticed. The rat is an unavoidable appendage to human civilization. We humans are not averse to sending a sworn enemy in our place to battle this unloved animal neighbor, although occasionally without the desired effect. One reason why the rat is so disreputable is the places where it loves to hang around. You can hardly expect sympathy if you prowl about in the midst of scraps of food, garbage, and excrement. Yet its athletic skills are at the very least admirable. It climbs like an acrobat and does the 100-meter dash in under 10 seconds. Because of its intelligence, the rat is greatly appreciated in some places. The Chinese celebrate the rat for its caution and good judgment. China pays tribute to the smart rodents who, by a clever stratagem, achieved the highest rank as the first sign of the Chinese horoscope. The legend tells how the Emperor of China once held a race to determine the ranking of the signs of the zodiac. the rat rode across the raging river on the back of the good-natured ox, jumping off just before the winning post to beat the exhausted ox in the last yard. Ever since, the cycle of the Chinese horoscope starts with the year of the rat. The triumphant progress of this most adaptable and fertile group of mammals actually began much earlier. 8 million years ago, the range of its expansion reached its first climax in Africa. No complete fossilized skeleton of an rat has yet been found, but a few teeth suffice to make deductions about the earliest representatives of the family of rats. Like all the rodents, rats are provided with special chisel-shaped incisors. The noticeably long and strong hind legs help in the search for a suitable snack. They enable the rat to jump 70 centimeters from a standing position. And it is equally adept at the long jump. Unfortunately, its skills are not always properly appreciated. In medieval times, rats were already seen as unbidden guests. They cleaned out warehouses, poisoned granaries with their excrement, and multiplied with awesome speed. But rats only came to be viewed as the embodiment of death and illness when an insidious disease traveling with them penetrated into Europe, the bubonic plague, the Black Death. The pathogenic agent that caused the disease originated in a remote corner of Central Asia. Jointly with the rats, it spread along the international trading routes across gigantic territories. As a stowaway aboard merchantmen transporting spices, it finally brought the Black Death to Europe in 1347. The plague killed 25 million people in just 3 years. People were convinced that the ubiquitous rat transmitted the disease, but the traveling rodents were only a vehicle used by the Black Death. The pathogen itself was transmitted by fleas who found the blood of rats and humans equally delectable. 1/4 of the population of Europe died, and the innocent rats were indelibly branded with the stigma of evil incarnate. A few decades before those events, the people of the German town of Hamelin already held a grudge against the rats. The black omnivores thrived in the middle of the waste produced by the medieval town. In the year 1284, declares the legend, the burghers decided to employ a rat catcher known for his unorthodox methods. Thousands of rats are said to have followed the bewitching sound of his flute, enticing them into the river and to their death. But when the flautist found himself cheated of his fee, he took revenge by luring away the children of Hamlet. There's probably not much truth in the legend, yet its existence alone is proof that human settlements were already infested by rats in the Middle Ages. And in spite of fierce persecution by humans, nothing has changed since. Over the centuries, rats were confronted with a variety of obstacles, but they soon learned to keep pace with civilization. The rat is the universal genius among mammals. It is not quite perfect in everything, but it quickly learns to cope with change. a skillful artiste, excellently prepared for the tightrope walk of evolution. In India, reverence for the qualities of the rat has even assumed religious proportions. The temple in the small town of Dejnok in northern India is dedicated to the insatiable rodents. Here, the rats are gods. They are believed to be descendants of a holy woman named Karani Matas, living in the 15th century, who is said to have decided that her children would be reborn as rats. People of the Charani caste therefore consider every rat to be the incarnation of their ancestors and treat it with due reverence. Some 20,000 rats live in the lap of luxury in the spacious temple where tasty morsels are showered on them and homage is paid to them. Nobody would dare to forfeit their favor. After all, an offering suffices for a human to be reborn as a rat. Here, rats are more valuable than anywhere else in the world. If you happen to step on one of the animals in the general push and shove, you are forced to donate a statue of a rat made of pure gold. And those who get a glimpse of one of the white rats living in the temple are sure that fortune will smile on them. Rats are dealt with less reverently in most of the rest of India. In the slums of Bombay, Delhi or Calcutta, they are unpopular for their habit of destroying food, and diseases like the dangerous fever from a rat's bite necessitate drastic action. Millions of rats are killed or poisoned. Indian community administrations offer rewards to get rid of the pest. 55 rupees are paid for 25 rats. This carcass disposal plant has handled 30 million dead rats in the last 15 years. In cities, rats can move about relatively unmolested. They are guided by their outstanding olfactory sense, and when a delicious smell beckons from the gap of a window at night, the rat is quick to take up the offer, even at the risk of encountering the mistress of the house. A few slaps in the face only serve to enhance its spirit of enterprise and appetite. The rat is also careful in choosing its menu, taking just a small nibble from unknown food to reduce the risk of fatal poisoning. Large rat packs have their own food taster to check out doubtful edibles. But this appears to be a household that appreciates rats. The Muridae family of long-tailed mice that includes the rats is highly diversified, but not all the rats are the genuine article. Rats are rodents, but the crested rat or bamboo rat, remote relatives, are not part of the family. The tiny long-tailed field mouse, on the other hand, is a near relative of the black and brown rats. In the early 18th century, Europe was solidly in the paws of the black rat, until a brown vagabond arrived from Asia to lord it over the black rat. The brown rat used state-of-the-art vehicles to progress its invasion from China and Mongolia to the rest of the world. Every merchantman and man-of-war setting sail carried among its crew a few hundred brown rats that left ship in the ports of Europe. When the English fleet went to fight the rebellious Americans in the New World, brown rats frisked about the cargo holds. It took just 1 century for the masters of survival to reach all corners of the earth.
Coming up, the clever rat beats the trap when Wild Discovery continues.
Today, the brown rats have conquered every corner of Europe and North America. Not all places were ideal habitats, but when you have ingenuity and versatility on your side, you can always come to an arrangement with the natives. In the country, brown rats live in self-made burrows, like their ancestors in Asia. In town, they have moved to cellars and sewers. Every corner has its particular use: bedroom, toilet, or pantry. Just now, the female is decorating the burrow for a special purpose. It signals its fertility period by emitting smell attractants that have the males scurrying in from all sides. During the 6-hour period, the female mates 200 to 500 times with several males from its group. After successful mating, the female can still decide whether it wants to be fertilized. Among rats, there is no such thing as an unwanted pregnancy. Whether this male will beget the progeny is therefore by no means certain. When external conditions are bad for offspring, for instance, a shortage of food, the female can store the sperm for later fertilization. With this, the male has fulfilled its duties as a father. At best, it may later return a little runaway or bring along some food. Rats are preoccupied with their search for food, and when the family is about to be increased, the appetite grows accordingly. On the farm, animals have long since come to an arrangement with the rats. The watchdog tolerates their impertinence, astonished but with a friendly mien. Rats feed on almost anything. It is one of their secrets of success. When the dog's bowl is empty, they make do with plants, a young rabbit, a small bird, a careless grass frog, or perhaps even the insulation of a power line. Barns always yield something edible for a rat. It makes a beeline for the manger with no detours. The sheep take no note of the furry guest at their table. The brown rat moves on for its next course. A typical farm has numerous culinary delights to offer. The hens are unaware of the skilled thief sneaking through the hay. Even when the theft of the egg becomes news, the hens make no effort to interfere. For the farm animals, rats apparently are unwelcome but familiar guests. The rat nevertheless decides to finish its meal at a safe distance. In the city, a visiting rat causes more of a flutter among its feathered populace. For thousands of years, rats have made their home in a human environment, making occasional direct encounters unavoidable. Reports of infants that were gnawed at by hungry rats at night are not entirely invented, but such events are rare. Normally, rats are very discreet and avoid direct confrontation. After all, it is mostly humans that try to chase and kill the rats. The underground nursery is prepared for the approaching birth. The female rat is busy collecting plants to pad the nest. It has no time to take a break. With the end of the relatively short period of gestation, slightly more than 3 weeks approaching, it is stepping up the effort to prepare the nest. It doesn't retire to the nest until just before littering. The litter consists of 6 to 20 young. They are carefully taken out of the womb and tenderly licked clean. In their first days, the wrinkled, pink young really don't look like rats. Blind and helpless, they depend on their mother's intensive care. When several females of a large pack give birth at the same time, the mothers share their nursing duties. In this way, they make sure that as many of the young as possible will survive, even if the mother should be killed. The rat's way of running an orphanage. In addition to their intelligence and highly developed community behavior, rats have another decisive advantage. Their sheer mass makes them successful. These newborns will be sexually mature in just 3 months. Among bred rats, at least, this means 800 children and grandchildren for each mother in a single year. In the wild, disease and predators ensure that the number of descendants is reduced to a still remarkable 200. In their fight against the fertile glutton, people have developed a host of methods, from the state-of-the-art to the classical. But the intelligent rat often sees through the overly simple mechanism, even though it has been well tested over centuries. A special shop in Paris sells every conceivable variation of this neck-breaking device. There's a wide choice of poisons, but it's not that easy to get the better of rats. Rats take just a tiny morsel of unknown food, and when a rat refuses the poisoned bait, no other member of the pack will touch it. The developing countries in particular are dependent on highly effective poisons. There, the rats gnaw at the very substance of farming. In some places, they destroy up to 70% of the harvest. The quantities that they actually eat in the granaries are almost irrelevant by themselves. What counts much more is that they drop feces and pathogens in their scouting trips through the stored crops, their land of milk and honey, spoiling large quantities of food in the process. In Thailand, a group of German scientists is developing a new method to combat the clever and robust pests. It doesn't look too innovative at first sight. Their old arch enemies, the snakes, are supposed to finish them off. But the snakes are just the carriers in a new type of biological warfare. The reticulated pythons harbor special monocellular parasites that spend the first part of their life cycle inside before being excreted. Large quantities of the dangerous monocells are harvested from the excrement and processed into a highly effective concentrate. Traditional poisons require a bait of at least 100 grams, but with this method, a single gram suffices. Field trials have shown that 3 in 4 rats feeding on bait spiked with the parasites die from the subsequent infection. The beauty of the snake parasite is that it only affects rats while leaving domesticated animals and humans unmolested.
Coming up, it's a
After just a few days, they show the first trace of fuzz that makes them look more rat-like. After 15 days, they have grown fur all over, begin to open their eyes, and set out to prospect their immediate surrounding. Rats don't enjoy a long period of carefree childhood, but need to learn quickly. Three weeks after their birth, they are weaned. The burrow grows restive. They begin a course of action that they will pursue for the rest of their lives: the incessant search for food. The young grow up quickly, and the mother can finally set about appeasing her own hunger. But there are others in the nocturnal forest with the same idea. A fox emerges from the shadow of the trees. Any small animal that crosses its path is in great danger, especially when it doesn't see the fox in time. The clever rat has found a narrow gap, and the fox is robbed of its meal. In some places, however, predators of the rats have converted the sewer system into a giant burrow. There it's moist, warm, and cozy, and the many entrances and exits are just what their ancestors were used to in their underground living quarters in the wild. With its lateral eyes, the rat sees a larger section of the sewer than we humans would. This is an enormous advantage, not just in closed rooms, even when your sight is limited to black and white. Underground city sewers are places to exercise great care. They are, after all, well known as haunts of shady characters. But although this time it's just a sewer worker, the rat still waits cautiously before continuing on its way through the narrow conduits.
Coming up, this one's not labeled a pest, but a pet, when Wild Discovery continues.
In the city, sewers are the motorways of the rats. Below splendid city boulevards, millions of them push and shove their way through them. The vicinity of markets in particular is crowded by enormous numbers of hungry rodents that turn into a veritable plague. When Les Halles was still an open-air market, merchants had to fight against hordes of undesirable four-legged customers. According to Parisians, when the market was moved, the rats were already waiting at the new site when the trucks arrived. They had taken a shortcut through the sewers. In the extensive network of a city's underground sewer system, rats find pleasant living conditions. The wastewater carries along more than enough that can be eaten. They simply wait for something appetizing to float along. There are lots of corners in the underground sewers that offer room for a rat searching for accommodation. This one does not appear to be roomy enough. While this rat hole seems to meet the most exacting requirements, unfortunately, it has already been taken. But if you don't mind a slight repair job, you will still find a good place. In the wild, brown rats are very social animals, forming large packs of more than 200 animals. Things are different in the city. When rats are crowded in confined space, their social relationships gradually disintegrate. Conflicts between neighbors are then unavoidable. Problems of this type disappear when a rat has the luck of encountering rat lovers. Contrary to their reputation, rats are excellent pets. They obey on command and are open to every kind of tenderness. In their immediate contact with people, they display great intelligence. Small tricks to please the humans are quickly learned.
Coming up, rats and their requisite role in research. Next on Wild Discovery.
Here it can demonstrate its astonishing memory. The corner of this glass maze holds a tasty morsel as a reward. To get it, the rat needs to overcome gaps and thus cannot be guided by its scent marks. The rat was shown the way through the maze just once, but without hesitating, it takes the right course. The white albino rats were bred specifically for research purposes. They offer scientists valuable insights into body functions such as the working of the brain. Their reaction to new drugs also provides pointers to human response. In this test, the pleasure center in the rat's brain is electrically stimulated. By running tests like this one, medical researchers hope to discover how mental illness can affect the nervous system. The storm is releasing a deluge of water that rushes through the narrow sewers at enormous speed. Such a flood may be perilous even to the most enthusiastic swimmer. The water roars from all the exits and the main sewer is rapidly filling. Desperately, the rat tries to keep his head above the water's surface. A narrow sewer is the last chance for escape. It soon finds why there's just a trickle of water in this particular sewer. The rat may be in for an unpleasant surprise. Rats will actually leave the sewer system in this way, occasionally overcoming several stories. Its fight has led the brown rat to a place that holds special memories for it. Rats have always been able to exploit human progress, occasionally one step ahead of us. This rat is leaving the city, heading into the unknown, defying us and fate. Its ancestors have sneaked into the cargo holds of freighters, conquering new continents with their talent for improvisation, intelligence, and unbeatable biological prerequisites. To us, they are weird and sinister, because we have been persecuting them for centuries and still not defeated them, even when we use the most terrible weapon available to us. In the late 1950s, Americans ignited their last hydrogen bomb on the Eniwetok Atoll. Several years later, biologists examined the specks of islands in the South Pacific. They found rats that looked the very picture of health. The survival artists had defied even the greatest imaginable disaster. From the corners of the Earth and out into the far reaches of space, they are still with us. And even there, our strange relationship continues. Evolving, matching us step by step, the rat has always been among us, but shows no signs of wanting to give up this odd partnership anytime soon.
Find out how New York City cops infiltrated and dismantled drug gangs as Discovery brings you an inside look at the elite group of officers who make up the C-11 Squad on the FBI Files.